Let's start with new polling on how Americans view the serious legal issues surrounding Donald Trump and their impact on the presidential race. Despite strong support among Republican voters, new numbers show Trump's criminal charges could spell trouble for him in a general election.
That's an understatement.
We have a lot of legal issues to get to pertaining to all of this. But first, the politics of it seems to be playing out. In the latest AP NORC Center survey, nearly two-thirds of adults, 64%, say they would probably or definitely not support Trump if he is the Republican nominee next year. Overall, 62% view the former president unfavorably, compared to 33% who view him favorably. As for the 4 pending cases against him, just 15% of Americans are buying the ex-president's claims that he did nothing illegal in the Georgia case. And when it comes to his hoarding of nuclear secrets, on the contrary, 53% say his actions were illegal. 53% also say they approve of the decision to indict Trump in the federal election interference case.
So we have a number of polls here.
There's more coming.
Dan had suggested that we break these up beforehand, and I thought, no, well, why don't we get about?
There's so many.
So much to get to there before we even get to the Fox News poll. But Charlie Sykes, this is what Republicans have quietly been panicking about. You look at these numbers. 64%. Jonathan Lemire, we'll go to you real quick. 64% in the AP poll. 64% say they're not going to support Trump next year. I actually saw people connected with Mitch McConnell and other Republicans tweeting that out, that this is devastating. I mean, that's who the Republicans are moving towards putting up. He has a 33% approval rating, a favorable rating in that poll. The majority believe what he did was illegal. And there are so many other polls that came out yesterday that are showing the same thing. Independents breaking dramatically away from Donald Trump. Independents saying he should have been indicted. Independents saying overwhelmingly that what he did was illegal. And you look at it's strange that to me at least, but actually the Georgia case, voters are more hostile toward him on the Georgia case than actually election interference, where still 47% say what he did was illegal, and an additional 18% said it was unethical. But the Georgia case and the classified documents case, those two cases look like the strongest, which is exactly what Andy McCarthy wrote about in the New York Post a couple of days ago, that it's those classified docs and the Georgia election interference cases that are going to cause him the most trouble, probably legally and politically.
Well, that's the same view held in Trump world, that those are the two cases all along that they've been most concerned about, in part because they're the easiest to understand. Americans, even who are not paying that much attention, who sometimes get lost in the steady stream of headlines that emanate from Donald J. Trump, they get the idea of you shouldn't have nuclear secrets at your golf club in Florida. They also have heard the phone call in which he's pushing the Secretary of State of Georgia, Brad Raffensperger, to find him the votes he needs to win. They get that. That resonates. That breaks through. And the poll is startling, Joe. Going through a little bit more here, there are 54% of people polled say Donald Trump threatened the very idea of democracy, while only 19% say he defended it. And again, among the general populations, this is both parties, 64% of Americans say they will definitely or probably not support Trump in 2024. That only leaves you with 36%. You can't win an election with 36%. So this is, as much as Trump has tightened his grip on the Republican Party, and while he is far and away ahead in the GOP primary field, these are general election numbers. These are general election numbers that not only would spell a loss for Donald Trump, but drag down the rest of the ticket, too. And that's why there are a lot of Republicans panicking that they could lose the House, and the Senate would be, their chance to retake the Senate would also be jeopardized if Trump's name is atop the ballot.
We've been very careful not to draw any conclusions on where Republicans are going to go. just because it's been so impossible to figure that out over the past 6-7 years. My former party. I will say, Charlie Sykes, for me, this is feeling a lot like June of 1974, leading up to Nixon's resignation in August. Trump will not back out. But I tell this story repeatedly of my father. When I'm trying to get my arms around how are they staying with Donald Trump, I remember my own dad staying with Nixon until the very end and then reading the transcripts of the tapes and saying, that guy is unworthy to be president. You look at these numbers. I mean, 64% of Americans saying they're not going to support Trump. His approval rating at 33%. 54% saying he threatened democracy itself. 18% saying maybe he strengthened it. His unfavorable views exploding in, continuing to go up. And then you look at these actions, classified documents, majority say what he did was illegal. Georgia election interference, 51% say it was illegal, 13% say unethical. Only 15% of Americans, let's underline this, agree with Donald Trump that he did nothing wrong. Only 15% of Americans agree with Donald Trump that he did nothing wrong in the classified documents case. Only 14% of Americans say he did nothing wrong in the hush money case. Of course, that is by far, for good reason, the weakest case. But these numbers, it sure seems like they're moving in one direction. And Charlie, the bad news for him is the more people find out about these cases, the worse news it is for Donald Trump.
Yeah, they ought to be a stunning reality check. Now we'll find out whether the Republican Party continues to be immune to reality. This ought to be the moment, by the way, though, that it ought to mark the end of all the magical thinking among Republicans that, something unicorn was going to come along and take care of Donald Trump, that they didn't have to do it, that somebody else would take care of the problem. That sense that they could amplify and rationalize and defend him and somehow run against him for president. Look, this is this moment where we have all of the major indictments have come down, and yet Republican voters continue to rally around him. So there's the challenge. What does Mike Pence do? What does Ron DeSantis do? What does Glenn Youngkin do? Are they going to continue to go along with the sort of same old conventional wisdom? We have to humor him. Remember that quote right after the election? What harm would it be to simply humor him? We'll continue to echo his comments about the weaponization of the justice system. But as you're pointing out, there are these giant reality checks out there saying, Republicans, do you know what you are about to do? We keep talking about these focus groups of Trump voters and what people are saying in diners in West Virginia. Take a step back and you realize you have more than 60% of Americans who say, no, we are done with Donald Trump. We're not going to vote for Donald Trump. That ought to be the ultimate reality check for Republican voters and leaders right now.